Welcome, travelers, to another tale from the Vale. Tonight, we journey to the gilded heart of the Sunstone Empire, to the magnificent palace of Emperor Valerius. Valerius was a ruler unlike any other. His days were filled with light, his laughter echoing through the marble halls, his judgments fair and his heart full of kindness. The people adored him, calling him the Daylight Emperor, for it seemed darkness could not touch him. But every light casts a shadow, and Valerius was no exception. From his earliest days, he was aware of a second self, a whisper in the back of his mind, a fleeting darkness at the edge of his vision. This was his shadow, a being of pure negativity. Where Valerius was kind, his shadow was cruel. Where he was generous, his shadow was greedy. Where he found joy, his shadow found only despair. As a boy, the shadow was a mischievous pest, urging him to trip a playmate or steal a sweet. Valerius learned to ignore it, to push it down, to live so brightly that the darkness had no room to grow. When he ascended the throne, he knew he couldn't risk the empire falling under its influence. He had to sever it completely, using ancient and forbidden magic. With the help of the court's most powerful sorcerers, Valerius performed a dangerous ritual. In a flash of blinding light and agonizing pain, he tore his shadow from his soul. It coalesced into a physical form, a mirror image of himself but cloaked in twilight, its eyes cold voids. Before it could speak, before it could act, Valerius had it bound in chains of silver and starlight and dragged away. He locked it deep within the palace's forgotten west wing. The doors were sealed with powerful enchantments. The windows were bricked over. And a legion of guards, the silent sentinels, were tasked with ensuring nothing ever got in or out. The emperor decreed that the west wing was never to be spoken of again. And so, the empire flourished. Valerius ruled with unparalleled grace and wisdom. The harvests were bountiful, the people were happy, and the Sunstone Empire entered a golden age. But the emperor himself began to change. Without his shadow, something vital was missing. His laughter, once genuine, became a hollow performance. His compassion, once deep, became a calculated act. He understood justice, but he no longer felt mercy. He was a perfect ruler, a flawless machine, but he was no longer truly human. He had locked away his doubt, his fear, his anger, and with it, his capacity for true, heartfelt emotion. Years turned into decades. The emperor never aged, his perfect smile never faltered, but his eyes grew distant. The West Wing remained a silent, looming monument to his secret. Inside, the shadow festered. It fed on the scraps of negativity that drifted through the empire, a farmer's envy, a merchant's greed, a lover's jealousy. It grew stronger, its silent rage echoing against its magical prison. One night, a terrible storm unlike any other descended upon the capital. Lightning shattered the sky and thunder shook the palace to its foundations. Amidst the chaos, a single bolt of pure, dark energy struck the West Wing. The ancient seals shattered. The silver chains melted. The door creaked open. The shadow, now a monstrous being of solidified despair, stepped out into the storm. It was no longer the emperor's twin but a twisted parody, its form shifting and writhing. The silent sentinels drew their swords, but their courage was devoured by the creature's aura of absolute dread. The shadow glided through the palace, its touch withering tapestries and cracking marble. It wasn't seeking destruction, it was seeking its other half. It found Valerius in the throne room, standing alone, his expression as placid as ever. The guards who tried to intervene were frozen by a wave of pure terror. "You are incomplete," the shadow hissed, its voice the grinding of tombstones. "You are a hollow shell, a lie made of light. I have come to make us whole again." For the first time in a century, Emperor Valerius felt something, fear. Not for himself, but for his people, for the world he had so meticulously protected. He drew his ceremonial sword, its blade gleaming. I cast you out to protect them, Valerius stated, his voice steady but lacking conviction. You cast me out to protect yourself, the shadow retorted. You feared your own darkness. But a man who cannot face his own shadow is not a man at all. He is merely half a soul. The creature lunged, not with a weapon, but with its very essence. It passed through the emperor's blade and slammed into his body. Valerius cried out, not in pain, but in a flood of overwhelming sensation. 100 years of buried fear, anger, grief, and doubt crashed down upon him. He fell to his knees, weeping, not the perfect, hollow tears of a king, but the raw, messy sobs of a man. When he looked up, the shadow was gone. He was alone, but he was not the same. He felt the familiar darkness coiling in his heart, but it was no longer a separate entity. It was a part of him. He could feel its bitter whispers, but now he also had the wisdom and strength of a century of light to balance it. He was no longer just the Daylight Emperor. He was simply Valerius, whole and complete. The empire did not fall. In fact, it became stronger. The emperor's judgments were now tempered with a deep understanding of human frailty. His kindness was no longer a duty but a genuine choice, made more meaningful by the darkness he now held in check within himself. He ruled for many more years, a wise and just emperor, a man who had finally learned that you cannot lock away your shadow, you can only learn to walk with it in the light. Thanks for joining us for this tale from the Veil. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and venture with us again into the shadows. Until next time.